Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. It's now 44 years since our independence, and we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections in this day and age. And the main reason why Zimbabwe is a failed state is because for the last 44 years we've been stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime, Zanu PF. We've not been able to remove it from office because the party rigs elections. So everything revolves around this issue, the ability to rig elections and stay in power against the democratic wishes of the ordinary people. We have failed to come up with a solution how to stop this insanity. I'm glad to see that many more Zimbabweans are beginning to see what has gone wrong. This video clip has been circulating in my WhatsApp group and has attracted a lot of attention. And I think it is very relevant. This is a recording of a group of individuals holding a demonstration in Guqula South over an issue they had no clue what it was all about. You can just have a quick listen to it.
Ndiripo makadi yenyu
tinofara ndiri kuona nhasi event yechiri kumbonyatsoitika panapa
ndiye musangano wedu wezanu PF
iri yechii machi yechii
izvo hatisati tanzwa kuti machi yechii
ndaona makabata chakanzi Guqula South pasi neinoti AfriForum chimbori chii
AfriForum zvinozikanwa nevagari vekugutu ndovanoziva
naibaba AfriForum zvinombonyatsoreva taona makati Guqula South yachi pasi neAfriForum
AfriForum zvinoratidza kuti tunga tiri forum yekuchegutu kwedu kwatonga tiri ikoko yatinoti tichiteedzera tiri ikoko.
aiwa
Who bewitched Zimbabweans to this level as a nation? Ask the person who posted that video. And I think it is an appropriate question to ask. Zimbabwe is in this mess because we as a nation have shown a level of ignorance, naivety, and being so gullible that we have landed ourselves into this mess. Universal suffrage should have been a blessing. But like our diamonds, gold, and so forth, this turned out to be a curse. Why? We have got to ask ourselves why, what has gone wrong. The truth of the matter is the corrupt, incompetent, ruling elite have taken advantage of the ignorance and naivety of the electorate. And indeed, they have deliberately kept them poor and ignorant for the purposes of exploiting them and exploiting their vote. Some people have often asked, why is it Zanu PF says that the political strongholds is in the rural areas? It's simple. That is where the majority of the people have been deliberately kept poor and ignorant. Ian Smith was advised by the likes of the late John Robertson, an economist of renown in Zimbabwe, that he should grant the rural blacks title deeds to land. That opportunity and asset which they could use then to borrow money. It will also give those people the confidence that they own something and they are happy to develop it. If the blacks were given title deeds to just even a few acres of where their rural home is built, I can tell you, many of them would build a decent house. They will develop the property, dig wells, boreholes, fence it off so that they could have fruit trees. Do something productive with that piece of land, because they will have the confidence of knowing that even if I should decide to move away from this place, I can sell it as an ongoing consent. It will have value. But when you do not have title deeds, the headman can tell you, yeah, you build your home in the wrong area, you should move. No compensation, nothing. The confidence of developing that place is not there. Ian Smith, of course, refused to give the blacks ownership of the land. He was content with a system where there was communal ownership. That's why the rural areas are called communal lands. No one owns the land. It's owned communally. The chief and the headman preside over that. Even the chief do not own the land, because the whites, the government can easily say, this area here has been designated for whatever, and the people in this area must move. And this was happening during Smith's time. And as we know, it has continued to happen now. Recently, after the 2023 elections, Zanu PF mounted a shocking operation where all of a sudden people who had settled, some of them as many as 20 years, found themselves being told they were settled in the wrong place. They must move. They had their crops burnt, their houses burnt. That is part of keeping the people poor and helpless. Robert Mugabe, soon after independence, was given the same advice by the same gentleman, the late Robertson, that he should give people in the rural areas title deeds. And he rejected it for the same reason. And if you understand that, now you can understand why the Zanu PF considers the rural areas its political stronghold. Chiefs, headmen have been turned into nothing more than Zanu PF political commissars. They can harry the electorate, the peasants in the rural areas, at will. rural voters were frog marched to attend Zanu PF rallies last year. And come voting day, they were frog marched to go and vote for Zanu PF. Universal suffrage is not a blessing. If you're going to be frog marched to vote for somebody whom you don't even want to vote for, it's a curse. We have seen this in the opposition too. When the MDC was launched in 1999, the party was riding on the wave of the popular sentiment that the country needed democratic changes, aimed specifically at stopping Zanu PF rigging elections. And Tsvangirai stepped forward with his friends, promising the nation that they will deliver those democratic changes. They even named their party the Movement for Democratic Change. And ever since then, they have chanted change, Chinja, as their slogan. And right up to the 2008 GNU, that was their chant. The majority of their followers had no clue what those democratic changes were. And to be quite honest, most of the leaders did not have a clue either. The few who may have had some notion of what it is, they quickly forgot it when the opportunity did arise for them to implement these democratic changes during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. Mugabe moved in very quickly. Soon as he had signed the global political agreement in December 2008, he had already worked out his plan. He was quick to make sure that the MDC leaders were denied nothing. They were welcomed onto the gravy train. They were given ministerial cars, the very generous salaries and allowances. And for Tsvangirai, the US $4 million mansion in Highlands. They completely forgot about the reforms. For 5 years of the GNU, not even one reform proposal was submitted by the opposition. The Zanu PF cronies used to boast that Mazwana MDC MDC leaders have learned to the good life on the gravy train. They will never rock the boat. They will never implement any reforms. And true enough, they failed to submit even one reform proposal. It is interesting to note that their followers, in their ignorance, had no clue what the reforms were. They had no clue that the primary purpose of the GNU was to implement the reforms. And so it is no surprise that when the MDC leaders failed to implement even one reform, the followers did not even realize it. And ever since the GNU debacle, MDC leaders have completely abandoned the fight to implement reforms. They changed their tune. They've now been fighting, surprise, surprise, to win rigged elections. They claimed they had strategies of how to win rigged elections. You don't need reforms if you're going to win rigged elections. You just need the strategies of how to win rigged elections. And last year, Chamisa was telling us that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. To the ordinary person, more rational person, we're asking, how have you plugged those vote rigging loopholes, such as you need a verified voters roll? Because Zanu PF will use this corrupted voters roll to deny people who deserve the right to vote and to increase its own vote by allowing people multiple votes. But Chamisa was adamant. He had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. He insisted. His followers had no clue, of course, what was going on. And so they believed him again. And they participated in the flawed elections. Only by doing so to give Zanu PF political legitimacy. And as for Chamisa and company, they were after the few gravy train seats, which Zanu PF had always been giving us bait. And they were happy to get those. And as for the people themselves, the masses, all the success they did was to perpetuate the dictatorship and perpetuate their own suffering. As I said in the beginning, Zimbabwe is a failed state because we failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And by participating in a flawed electoral process to perpetuate your own suffering, how can that be a blessing? Here was an opposition leader that was just exploiting the ignorance, naivety of his own followers. Conning them into participating in an electoral process that will only perpetuate their own suffering. I think this issue of Zimbabweans being bewitched is an important question to be asked. We cannot continue to do the wrong thing. As much as universal suffrage is now a reality in the country, we still can rise above it and realize how those in positions of power and authority are deliberately keeping the masses ignorant, poor, and frightened for the purposes of exploiting all that to keep themselves in power. They have no intention of educating the ordinary people. They are quite happy that the ordinary people should continue to believe that they're doing the right thing, attending rallies, demonstrations, which they don't understand what is going on for a cause that they don't even know. and in some cases, undermining their own best wishes, best interests. Participating in flawed elections for the purposes of giving Zanu PF legitimacy and thus perpetuating the dictatorship, it is not in the voters' interest. That is the number one message that I would like to leave with the Zimbabweans out there. We can't be that naive and kept being used. The elections, last year's elections, should not have taken place without reforms. And now we are preparing for the 2028 elections. It looks like it's going to be a repeat of that. We will only have ourselves to blame. No one is going to change Zimbabwe except ourselves. That is the truth. It is not rocket science to see that the political system in Zimbabwe is not working and to start asking the relevant questions. And I'm glad to see that a few people are really beginning to ask those relevant questions. Before I close, I'll just post this comment from somebody, Larry. It is a banana republic. There is no respect of livelihoods and dignity. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. But I think in this particular case, what we've got also to realize is that we should not expect Zanu PF thugs or the opposition sellouts to do anything other than what they're doing right now. I think one of the things I find really disappointing here is that there are so-called Zimbabwean intellectuals who have been following Zanu PF and Triple C blindly. And it is unforgivable. I find it ridiculous that they have not questioned what is going on here. To be quite honest, if you think about it, many of Triple C supporters, the so-called Chamisa Chete Chete Brigade, are intellectuals. How could anyone be so naive? And yet, many of them have got university degrees. They've got good professions. Man is supposed to be a creature of reason. I think the one thing that we have shown as Zimbabweans again and again in the last 44 years is that we have not been using our head. It is time we start using our head for a change. Personally, I think it will be a great disappointment if in 2028 we see the same people conned into participating in those elections without even one token reform implemented. All one can do right now is try to persuade people of the sheer futility of participating in these fraud elections. The sheer futility of believing such an obvious and idiotic lie like I've plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, when the individual has not even pushed for a verified voters roll. He did not even deploy election agencies at all polling stations, even when he had been given the money to do so. Like it or not, Triple C, Chamisa and his Triple C friends were nothing more than the Zanu PF Team B. They were participating in those elections for the purposes of Team A to win and to give Team A legitimacy, which they delivered. And it was at our expense, we, the ordinary people's expense. Ever since the flawed elections in 2023, Triple C leaders have been fighting among themselves for the few gravy train seats. No sooner than the elections were declared, election results were declared, the fighting among Triple C leaders for those few gravy train seats started in earnest, with Savango recalling, claiming that he was the Secretary General and recalling those who had been elected. And he has since nominated himself and others to take their place. Wherever there were by-elections, the infighting in Triple C was so intense that none of those by-elections, most of those by-elections anyway, were won by Zanu PF and not Triple C. But they managed to retain those proportional representation seats, like in all the Senate seats in the Senate and some in Parliament. And Savango has been able to appoint his friends into those positions. That was what they were fighting for. They didn't care that the elections were not free, fair, and credible, as long as they got the few gravy train seats. And any private individual out there who supported participating in those elections, when they saw what was happening post the elections, if they had any brain at all, they would have been scratching their head and saying and asking themselves, what is going on? Thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.